But the problem with that, this idea of being harsh or abrasive, right? I think of I've always thought about it in the context of I'm passionate in what I do. I want everybody to hear I'm not doing this because of anything other than I believe in what I'm doing and I want the world to know. But unfortunately to others, it just comes off as maybe something that's not as authentic or that's harsh. And so I would have loved to have fixed that earlier on.
I hear you.
You just made a comment about if I were a man, right? I think there are certain things as women in leadership that, and I'm not crying foul. I'm not complaining. I'm not bemoaning this. I'm just simply saying that we have maybe in some areas fewer allowances, right? There are some things that we can't do because there's an immediate judgment of it in a way that wouldn't be, and I know I'm probably going to get skewered for this, but that wouldn't be for my male colleagues, right? So to your point, I'm abrasive, they're tough.
I got so used to being the only woman in the room, I didn't even notice it anymore. Did you know that only 31% of sales leaders are women, even though 50% of the sales reps are women? I'm Amy Evans. After 25 years of sales leadership in corporate America, I help B2B tech and AI CEOs hit their number as a sales strategy advisor. I also host the Women in Sales Leadership podcast, where you'll learn what it takes to lead at the highest level, withstand the pressure to deliver the numbers, and elevate your career without losing yourself. No fluff, just the real stuff of women in sales leadership. If you aspire to become a CRO, vice president, first-time sales leader, or start your own business, you're in the right place. You are going to want to stop right now and click follow so you don't miss the episodes that drop every week. Welcome to the Women in Sales Leadership podcast. In today's episode, I get to reconnect with a longtime friend and powerhouse sales leader, Kim Heald. With a career spanning over 2 decades, Kim shares her journey from competitive figure skating to navigating the complexities of sales leadership. She opens up about her early days as a sociology major and her bold pivot away from a planned career in law, leading to transformative experiences at ADP and beyond. Kim reflects on the pivotal moments and relationships that really shaped her path, the challenges of breaking into new markets with innovative products, and the importance of finding mentors and leveraging leadership coaching. This conversation is rich with insights on resilience, self-awareness, and growth in the face of professional and personal challenges. Whether you're looking for inspiration to level up your leadership skills or to reframe your career journey, Kim's candid and energizing story will leave you empowered. Let's dive in.
Welcome to the Women in Sales Leadership podcast. I am so thrilled to have a person that I've known for a long time on the show today, and I'm so honored to have her here. And I think you're going to find what I've always found, which is the energy that this person brings to the conversation, her expertise, her passion, and her drive is just something that I think we can all borrow from on any given day. And I'm so thrilled to have Kim Heald here with us today. So Kim, welcome to Women in Sales Leadership. Good morning. We've known each other for a long time. It's pretty crazy, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Back in the ADP days. I think, like 2000
in payroll.
2007? Yikes. It's a long time.
Oh my gosh. I mean, those were teenage years for us, obviously.
I think so. Yeah. I look in the mirror and I still see the same girl I did when it was 2006. No doubt about
it. Same. Little wiser. Wiser.
For sure.
So Kim, I would love to start at the beginning, which is to go into your story. And when I'm talking about your story, the way back from the beginning, like where you grew up, where you went to school, that stuff.
Yeah. Well, although I live in sunny South Florida, I think I win the weather. It's still 80. I don't know if I'm winning, but it's 85 degrees outside right now and it's beautiful.
You're winning when there's not a hurricane. You're definitely winning.
That is accurate. And I think there's another one coming our way. I am originally from Los Angeles. For all intents and purposes, I'm a Valley girl. You know, I hung out at the mall that you see in Fast Times at Ridgemont High.
Seriously.
Yeah, right. Sherman Oaks Galleria. I so grew up in LA, went to high school, went to a private school in high school. Wasn't smart enough to get into UCLA the first time around, so I went to UC Santa Barbara. And I mean, I think it's, you know, it's generous to say that I studied while I was at UC at Santa Barbara, but, you know, I'm feeling generous today. And then left Santa Barbara and transferred to UCLA. And so I can say with pride that I'm a UCLA Bruin.
Mm-hmm.
I, as a young person, when you think about kind of what makes you, as a young person, I was a competitive figure skater. Kind of wake up in the morning and go to skate before school, leave school early in the afternoon, skate after school. I'd sleep in my skating clothes so I wouldn't have to wake up any extra earlier in the morning to get dressed. But I think that just competing in ice skating is very super competitive. I think that's just kind of molded me. And that's right, wrong, you know, good, bad, or ugly. That's really, I think, in a way has kind of marked just the kind of person I am and the kind of roles that I take and kind of I think I would be a way different person had I not had that piece.
Oh.
People knew me at school as, oh, she's the ice skater. Now, whether or not I was good enough, right, that's a whole different deal. Just because you practice and just because you go and just because you make the commitment doesn't mean that you're going to go to the Olympics. And so when people would ask me, what do you want to do when you grow up? It was either be an Olympic skater, which I was not good enough. But it was always nice to dream, or an attorney, which I ran away from big time as a young adult. So, but yeah, I'd say that's you know, mom's Italian. My mom born in Italy, raised in Argentina. My dad born in the States. The whole thing.
Wow.
Family stayed married until my mom passed. So, yeah, back to the beginning. Los Angeles, the Valley.
Wow. I forgot that. About you.
And I never knew the skating part, by the way.
How long did you do the skating?
I started skating when I was 4, you know, and that's kind of that whole thing is let's go do those public lessons, those group lessons, and then get the cookie at, you know, the Mrs. Fields afterwards. And then my mom was like, she's only going to do this because she wants the cookie. So of course, then we stopped doing that. But then apparently I kept on asking. And then that's when she realized that I really wanted to do that despite the cookie, or in spite of the cookie. And so, yeah, so I started at 4. And then I quit when I was just shy of 16. And it was funny because I got injured a little bit before. And that's kind of when you sit with your feelings and you start to really kind of be honest with yourself. I really just at that point realized that I just wasn't good. I mean, I was good. I just wasn't good enough. And
hey there, I'm pausing the show for a moment. I want to extend an invitation to you to follow this show. Please stop right now and take just 15 seconds to hit follow on whichever app you're listening on. I know you are a generous person, and one more invitation I have is for you to please take a moment now and forward this episode to a friend who you think might enjoy it. It would go a long way to making a difference and spreading the word about women in sales leadership. Thank you so much, and back to the show.
Being a competitive athlete, you kind of have to almost believe that you're good enough to keep going.
Yeah.
And I just, at one point, I'll never forget it. I sat on the counter of the kitchen that I grew up in. And I said to my mom, I have to talk to you about something. And she's like, what do you have? And I'm like, I think I'm done. I think I'm done. And she's like, okay. And the grace that she gave, you know, because you know, it's hours upon hours every week. It's weekends, it's mornings, it's afternoons. Yeah, that was a big day.
Wow.
But I still skate.
You do? Okay.
What kind of skating do you do now? Just fun, public skate. And I still have the last pair of skates that I ever owned. So those things are about, 25 years, but I refuse to rent skates. I would never do that. I would never skate if I had to rent skates. But yeah, I use my own skates, just public skate, mess around, have some fun.
Oh my gosh, that is so cool. And you grew up in LA and you did this skating.
Yeah, right. You'd be surprised to know that there are more than, back then there were several different skating rinks to choose from, several different clubs. So it wasn't like there was any shortage. It's not kind of what you think when you think of ice skating.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. So you went to college. What did you study in school? Talk about that. So, I started as a poli-sci major because, my dad was an attorney by day. My dad really, if he could have made it work, would have been a stockbroker, and kind of every year he probably does about 80,000 trades. So it's pretty serious. But his day job was being a lawyer. And so that kind of was always what I thought I was going to do. So I started school as a poli-sci major, and I very quickly realized that that's not at all, that I had zero interest, which is too bad because now I feel like I'm a fairly political person. But back then, the material was too dry. And so, frankly, if I'm being super honest, I picked my major. Back then, you could pick your major late. And so, kind of mid-year, my senior year, I looked at all of the credits that I had accumulated, and it turns out I was a sociology major. So I got myself a degree in sociology. And one of the first kind of real jobs, if you will, and not even real, but I'd gone to interview at Citibank. And at the time I was living in San Francisco, and I'll never forget it. The guy that was interviewing me was like, "Oh, I see you're a sociology major." And I was like, "Yeah." And he's like, "Yeah, that and a dime should buy you a cup of coffee." And at that moment, I didn't realize that I should be maybe a little offended. But I remember walking out and I thinking, that's not nice.
No.
That was not encouraging. No. Needless to say. And then they also don't tell you when you're in your first interviews never to talk about what your plans are if it's outside of the opportunity, right? So I sat there in that office talking about how I was going to be an attorney and I was going to go to law school. So all he heard was, okay, this woman is temporary at best. And so was not a match made in heaven, but luckily. Yeah, so sociology major, really kind of by accident, not because it was this burning desire. It's where my credits were. I don't know. I think you might be surprised if you really thought about it, about the stuff you might have learned when you were studying that stuff that you might apply. Sales is a sociology kind of game, I think. You're not wrong. Maybe it's more a psychological kind of game. And maybe it is. You care about people. And so maybe that's kind of somehow a part of that.
Yeah. I hear you.
Well, so you had this degree in sociology. You thought you were going to go to law school. Kim, you're not an attorney. I mean, I hate to point out the obvious here. What happened? So as I was kind of I'm a terrible test taker, if I'm, being super honest. I was also never one that, I didn't have to study, and I had to study to do well on tests. But when I sat for the LSATs, and even when I sat for the SAT, I barely got the points for writing my name right. But the LSATs, I didn't do well at all, really poorly on the LSATs. And so it really is how you do on the LSAT is indicative of, or kind of it sets the tone of what schools are going to accept you.
Mm-hmm.
And when it became super clear that the schools that I wanted to go to, there was not a chance in the world that they would ever accept me, I really had to weigh kind of my desire to be an attorney with what was left, where I was going to go.
Yeah.
And I think at that point, I just realized that I had been saying I want to be an attorney because that's just, I didn't know any better. That's what my dad did. That's what he did to provide for the family. And it was interesting because when I finally told my parents that I wasn't going, my dad's like, "What do you mean?" And I said, even you don't like what you're doing. You would rather be a day trader. You do this because you have to, not because you want to. And you said law school sucked. And so how can you sit here and be mad at me for making this decision when you don't even, love what you're doing? I think my dad loved the financial opportunity that it afforded, it was safe for the most part.
Yeah.
And I know that that's what my mother, her motivations were, well, your dad's successful and we live in this certain way. And but it's not what I want to do. And I actually kind of, I don't want to say that I ran away from home, but I left UCLA. I graduated a little bit early and I got in the car and I was going to San Francisco for the summer. And then I was there for about 7 or 8 years. I mean, it really is
long summer.
It was a long summer, but I had all of the law school applications come to this new address.
Mm-hmm.
And I just told my parents I didn't get into anywhere because I knew that if I got in anywhere, they'd be, all right, you're going, and there's not a chance. So what'd you do instead? Oh gosh, I worked at Pete's Coffee and Tea when I first got to San Francisco. That was awesome. Come home smelling like coffee beans. But if you ever had Pete's Coffee, it's some of the best coffee in the world. And back when I lived in San Francisco and worked at Pete's, that was a simple cup of coffee that was turbo fueled. It was amazing. And then from there, I worked at Enterprise Rent-A-Car. And at the time, I had a boyfriend who was this highfalutin whatever, and he worked for PeopleSoft. And I remember him saying out loud, like, "You're going to go work at Enterprise Rent-A-Car? What's wrong with you?" And I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do, but this seems like a legitimate opportunity. If you spend any time at Enterprise, you recognize that these are hardworking people that are part of a business, and they're teaching you how to run a business. And so I did that for a little while. It took me a little while. Then I went into pharmaceutical sales because I thought that would be super cute and fancy. And I realized really quickly that pharmaceutical sales at the time was just more of a glorified event planner. And I just realized really quickly that that was not. The idea of standing at a desk and waiting for a doctor to come out of his or her office to sign my sample sheet so I could leave my nose spray. And every time they would walk out of the office, see you, and then walk into the next office, I was like, I have not. So you can take your free card back and you can take your computer back. And then at that point, I moved to New York and started with ADP. And I think that's really, truly when my sales career started. Well, I had never really, I need to open my door because I've got a four-legged. I interviewed at ADP and turns out that my husband's family, my husband grew up in a small town in New Jersey, and in that small town held basically the CEO of ADP. And so when we were going to New York, I didn't know what ADP was. I had no idea. I sent my resume to Gary Butler. He sent it to Jeff Dooney, who was the time the divisional vice president of. Hang on, Kim. Is this when Gary was the CEO of ADP? Yeah. Yeah, back before. Just want folks to take note, the bold move of sending us a resume to a Fortune 500 CEO. Yeah. Okay. I hadn't the slightest idea that I have to be very honest. I didn't know until I got there. And it was funny. So kind of my opportunity was set in stone. And what Jeff Dooney had said to me is like, look, barring you walked in here with a toilet on your head, you were getting this job. There's no way that we were going to turn away somebody that Gary Butler was like, interview this person. So, but it really set me on a course. So I started with ADP in New York City. I was in the mid-market accounts. And I ran around that city in, 4-inch boots. And, probably was the best shape of my life. I won't say more, but really that's a hard job.
Yes,
ADP was, what have you done for me lately? Every day is a new day. You get to celebrate the wins for a moment. And then the next day it's, what are you doing? That truly, I think that was probably the second most important move. Or, if I think about ice skating as being kind of something that sets you on a certain path, I'd say working at ADP really set me down the sales path in a way that I just couldn't figure out a way to make it work when I was living in San Francisco, kind of a couple, starts and stops there. But that ADP thing was real. And then from there, we were in New York City for a couple of years, then moved down to Florida with the ADP. And then that's, I think, where you and I met, because moved into the alliances back when we were going to tell brokers that they needed to buy HRB and that if they didn't do it, somebody else was. Oh, Lord. And then that's where I found brokers, right? I found benefits, and that another happy accident. I got paired up with a gentleman by the name of Dennis Goldstein, who remains a broker in this market today. Dennis and I are dear friends. We sit on separate sides of things right now, but we're close friends. I would say he's my mentor, and I kind of thought to myself, I like the life that Dennis leads. I appear to like the kind of business that I want to do that. And so really the last, call it, that's 2009, right? So whatever that said, the last 17 years has been on the benefit side. Yeah. I want to back it up for a second and talk about Dennis. Like, how did that relationship come together? I mean, finding that kind of a career-long mentor is, a lot of people want that. They don't know how to do it. You know, how did it come together for you?
Yeah, look, so at the time I was working for ADP down here in West Palm, and Ryan Anschutz was the manager of that team, right? And they were building this relationship with a local broker, and Dennis Goldstein worked for that agency. And so I kind of met Dennis for lunch, and he's like, look, Kimberly, and he still calls me Kimberly. It's awesome. Not many people do, but he's like, look, the only question you have to ask is, are you happy with your broker? And if the answer is anything but yes, just bring me in. And, oh yeah, I think I can do that. I could, and I did. And it was fun. And so he and I ran around together, and I would always ask, you happy with your broker? Back then, benefits were so different. Benefits were way different than they are today. And so it's a lot easier to say, do you like your broker? And then for a broker to come in and do something different and win the business. And so, but Dennis and I met Dennis in 2004. And he's scheduled to spend money on me, take me to lunch to some fancy spot down in Miami because I lost a bet, and I won't talk about what the bet was, but I lost it. And so winner buys.
He's taking you to dinner because
winner buys. Yeah, winner buys that. And so we're going to Joe's Stone Crab on the 13th of December, which notably is Friday the 13th, and it felt appropriate based on the loss. So it's kismet, it's serendipitous that we met and that we hit it off in the way that we did. But he also, here again, set me on a path. You think about all this path setting, all these moments in time that you don't think about as they're happening, but really do shift your life in a way that you don't think about until you're, 50, and here you are.
And how many of those moments did you control?
Could I have made a decision? Could I have said, I don't want to work for a payroll company? I could have, but I didn't really know any better to say that. Could I have met Dennis and thought that he just wasn't my people? Yeah.
That's not what happened, right?
That's not what happened. But who's to say that I wouldn't have met somebody else, right? If Dennis wasn't Dennis and I didn't hit it off and it was somebody else, who knows, But then you also have to think about all of the people, all of the things, all of the people that you've met that you did say no to, and in no kind of fabulous way. It was just no. And what if you had said, what if there was a different answer? Who knows? Like there's a guy at ADP, Mike something or other. He had left ADP and he had gone to SAP. ADP, the whole thing, right? And I can remember I went through an interview process with him because at the time I was working for a carrier that just was not organized in a way that was working out for me. And I was this close to taking that role. And I think about that shift, that means that the next 10 years or the next 12 years would have been totally different than they ended up being. And who knows?
Yeah, I get it. I'm going to shift gears for a sec. Is it the end? Are you guys coming up on the end of your fiscal right now? I tell you, and I hope you feel differently. I used to have this it's actually, I think I still have post-traumatic stress about it. The holidays and the fiscal end of year collision, and being a mom. And I'm trying to embrace, we celebrate Christmas in my house. I'm trying to now embrace Christmas, but I used to actually be like, if there was a picture of a female Grinch in the dictionary, my face would have been there.
Yeah.
Yeah. The business, the whole company is counting on you and your team to deliver the goods. And meanwhile, you got trees and festivities and kids' presents and family wanting shit from you. Talk to me about how do you work through this? Because it's one of the things that just absolutely derailed me every year.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think I feel that in the benefits business, in the types of roles that I've had, luckily that last week has been an opportunity just to look at it. I think about it kind of from my husband's perspective too, and he runs his own business, and you can just tell sometimes that we're just not in the moment. And whether it's just tight stress or just kind of, thinking about something that's not family related, it's kind of sad to me because at my tombstone, right, or at my gravesite, it isn't going to be, God, she worked hard.
Yeah, I know.
It's all those lost moments that I could have paid more attention to with my kid, right? My son is 15. He's 2.5 years from being an adult and doing something that is out of this house. And he's never going to be as young as he is today. And is it worth it? And I think that's the question that Teddy doesn't care. Teddy just wants his mom, to be in the moment. I found that the stress at ADP, though, was fascinating because it was different, right, Amy? I think the stress in November, December was are we going to qualify for fast starts, right? Are we going to be able to get on that trip to Mexico? And I can remember, or April, May was really kind of that was the time because of that, the way that ADP runs their fiscal. And I can remember I would literally be at dinner with my husband and thinking about the number of belly buttons that I was kind of trying to sell. This group had this number of people, and this group had this number of people. And I would be sitting there off in the distance, running through the numbers. And okay, am I going to get to the goal? We kind of know in October, November if we're going to hit the goal. And so you kind of celebrate it or mourn it in a little bit in advance of Christmas. And then Christmas is, okay, how are we going to start faster? But what I'm doing today is way different really than all of the other stuff. It's my second bite at the startup apple.
Yeah.
And just as the first, right, what we're doing is something that is new in an industry that's fairly old, and we're trying to change people's minds. A lot of stakeholders in this transaction, and a lot of I believe wholeheartedly that what we're doing is the right thing. But what keeps me up at night and what I think about at the Christmas tree, right, is the things that I feel like we're doing, other people just may not care. The problem that we're solving, employers may not see it as a problem, or brokers have way bigger fish to fry. And so that's the part that I wrestle with is how do I keep my team motivated in the face of this is hard. This is a product that's new to the industry. It's a brand that's new to the industry. We had to change our name earlier this year. So that was a stumble for us a little bit. And, how do we get people that we're selling to through other people? How do we get these people to care?
Yeah.
In a way that we do. And that's really at this point what keeps me up. And
you're talking about the customer, who you're selling to.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. We have a whole bunch of different customers, right? As an insurance agency, we sell through the benefit brokerage community, and so, and for all intents and purposes, brokers are the intermediary between employers and all the many insurance carriers that are relevant in, kind of in their benefits and risk, right? So, we call on benefit brokers and all of the kind of stakeholders in those agencies who control the blocks of business, and we lean on them to kind of sell our product, right? So it's kind of like arm's length. We never really have direct access to these clients unless somebody says, you present it, right? Or you do the open enrollment. And so the first sale is, how do I get this broker or this consultant or this account executive, whatever, to hear me? And then how does that translate into, okay, I'm going to take a chance with you and I'm going to show it to my client, right? So it's hard.
It's a double sale.
Right? It really is. It really is. We actually had a really interesting scenario though happen where we sat on a panel. We were invited. We sponsored a broker employer seminar. We sat on a panel, and the panel was based on data analytics. And so we think Ansel's data analytics heavy, and, we can show proof of how the product works and whatnot. But anyway, so there are a lot of people in this room, and post seminar, the salesperson that lives in Texas got a lot of calls as a result of the seminar. And one of them was from an attendee of the seminar who was not a client of the agency that sponsored the event. Right. And so when that broker called the salesperson on my team in Texas, it's kind of been out of shape a little bit. Right. Ultimately, it ended up working out, and it ended up being a positive experience for everybody. Imagine your client is going to some other broker seminar. They're calling you to tell you that you want to talk about a product. And while we may have been calling on that agency for weeks, months, years, it took the client to hear it, right? And so we do a lot of different ways. We put a lot of focus and trust and energy in this broker community who we love and we love to partner with, in the hopes that they turn around and like us enough that they bring us to their clients.
Yeah, I get it. Channel sales, co-selling, all that stuff. It's a heavy lift. Worth it when you unlock the key, when you unlock it and figure out how to get it all done. Getting to that part is tricky. That's why they say it's hard work.
Yeah, and that's what makes the wins here so much more fun. Right? Because the win here means so many different things, right? It's the whole thing. And so it's a new product. It's a difference maker. It's moving a market. It's whatever it is. And so when we win here, no matter if the client is small or big, every win just validates that we're onto something and that we're doing the right thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
We just need more of them. But that's the thing. How do we get more people to see what we're doing and want to do it with us? And that's what keeps me up at night.
I hear you. So let's shift a little and talk about leadership advice. If you were talking to yourself, 10 years ago, you could go back in time and talk to you. What would you have to say? What do you feel like people need to know that they don't know about sales leadership?
I think the first thing that I would say is to go out and get yourself a leadership coach.
Really?
Yeah, I have one right now.
Yeah. How's it going?
It's remarkable because it really puts a spotlight on the things that slow you down.
Yeah.
Right? It puts a spotlight, and it hopefully ends up resolving those issues that stop you from, having a connection with your team, right? Having a connection with your peers, and really kind of moving the needle or driving towards the outcome that you want, right? Look, I recognize in myself that I can be considered sometimes harsh, right?
We call that tough.
Right.
If you were a man, they would never call you harsh, just for the record.
Don't disagree. But the problem with that, this idea of being harsh or abrasive, right? I think of that I've always thought about it in the context of, I'm passionate in what I do. I want everybody to hear I'm not doing this because of anything other than I believe in what I'm doing and I want the world to know. But unfortunately to others, it just comes off as maybe something that's not as authentic, or that's, that's harsh. And so I would have loved to have fixed that earlier on.
I hear you.
You know, I mean, you just made a comment about if I were a man, right? I think there are certain things as women in leadership that, and I'm not crying foul. I'm not complaining. I'm not bemoaning this. I'm just simply saying that we have maybe in some areas fewer allowances, right? There are some things that we can't do because there's an immediate judgment of it in a way that wouldn't be, and I know I'm probably going to get skewered for this, but that wouldn't be for my male colleagues, right? So to your point, I'm abrasive, they're tough.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I hear you.
And so if and I've been accused of having a tone. I have tone. I know I have tone. I have tone.
No, you have a tone.
I have tone and can be off-putting. So had I had a coach 10 years ago, I could have, what this person is doing for me now, just putting everything in perspective, right? When I'm going this on somebody, their immediate response is to go like this, which is the opposite response but I never thought about it like that.
Yeah.
Right. I'm pushing and I want them to come closer. I don't want to repel them. Right. And so, you know, or that I feel like I'm, you know, where I stand and I have don't hold back, but it's like, you can do that as long as the person you're doing that with kind of believes that you have their best interests at heart. And if you haven't cultivated that, then you could be tough all you want. They're just going to think that you're a jerk, right? So those are the things that I didn't recognize, right? I thought it was good just to be out in front and just to be honest and to be like, just kind of say it as it is. And the fact is that's not, you don't get to just be that. You don't get to just do that. So that's the one thing that I would say is if you're going to get into this leadership thing, and you have the time, get yourself a leadership coach because they'll help you frame things. I have a call with him today at 12 because there's a scenario that I want to work through with him. That is, I need help. So then the second thing is ask for help. You don't have to do this alone, right? Ask for help. Take the feedback. My boss right now is real good with real-time feedback. And sometimes where I may not be in the mood, I know he's telling it to me because he wants to see me succeed. And there are things that I do that he thinks slow me down from succeeding. And so he tells me so that I can be more successful, right? And so if I were to tell my 30-year-old self, you're not as big a badass as you think you are. So take the advice and assume that the person has your best interest in mind, because I would say most of the time people in leadership roles, right, they do or they should. So go in with this idea that the person you're working with has your best interest in mind and be open to the feedback and sit with yourself. You know, you may not like it, you may disagree, but if you really sit and think, they're probably not wrong. People see something in you that you don't necessarily see in yourself, or people see something in you that you see in yourself, but that you think is different than what they see. And so, I mean, I know that was just a good, I can't believe I just said that, but that's true. You know, you take the advice, sit with yourself. You may not love it, but in the end, people are doing it because they want to see you succeed and they think that you're slowing yourself.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. That's so powerful. That is. Because here's the truth. We all have blind spots. Every single one of us. I too, Kim, it took a long time to give myself A, permission, B, also to get my ego out of the way so that I could be willing to ask for help and accept it. And then also to kind of like acknowledge that I'm worthy of the investment of coaching for myself and that my life is worth it, my career is worth it. I didn't hire a coach until 5 years ago. I've been leading people and teams for over 12 years now. And only halfway through I got a coach. That's okay. Better than never.
Sure. Yeah.
Right. But I think you're spot on. The coaches really can help us get through and around the blind spots and seeing them and choosing how do we deal with it. Because here's the truth. Like, I'm also abrasive.
Yeah.
I have been told. I have been told abrasive, direct. What are the other words? Those are kind of the biggies. But there's some other things too. Hey, for all those handful of things that you don't do great, there's 400 other things that you're brilliant at, right? Or else you wouldn't be where you are today.
Sure.
And come on, there's a reason that all these athletes, ice skaters included, have coaches to improve and get better.
No kidding. And what's fascinating about this idea of blind spots is what I thought was a strength turns out is a blind spot.
Yeah.
And I never would have thought about it that if not for this coach.
Yeah.
I think I'm direct. I'm just going to tell you how it is. And then it's like, well, you might keep doing that, but you might not have enough credits in the bank in the direct bank to take out those debits. So yeah, I mean, all the things we do have a little bit more to prove just because it is the way that it is. And that's okay.
I love it. Well, listen, this has been really, really insightful for me. I learned some things today that I didn't know, and I've known you for quite some time.
Long time.
Yeah. And it was really enjoyable for me. So I'm so thankful that you invested your time and donated it so generously to the folks that listen to this show and also with me. So thank you, Kim.
Well, thank you for inviting me. I always love seeing your gorgeous face. This is super fun.
Thank you so much for tuning in to the Women in Sales Leadership podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to follow us and share this with a friend. I'm serious. Stop right now and take a look at the app, whatever app you're using to listen to this episode on, and hit follow and share this with a friend. Send them a text. See if they would enjoy this show as well, learning all about and meeting women in sales leadership. Hey, and if you know somebody who is crushing it in sales leadership and should be on this show, reach out to me on LinkedIn, Amy Evans, or the Women in Sales Leadership podcast. I would love to connect. See you next time.